We women are constantly told from a very young age that we need to have kids and we need to find the right guy and we need to do it all before time runs out and the clock is ticking, blah, blah, blah. But what about men? And what about the male biological clock? For a long time, I didn't know that this existed. Then one day, I found myself reading a study about how men above a certain age are unlikely to ever have a child, in the same way that women above a certain age are unlikely to ever have a child, biologically. This led me to reading more about the male biological clock, a little known phenomenon that nonetheless exists. I'm trained as an economist at NYU, so my brain loves data. The more I read and the more I began working with high achieving men and women around the world, the more I saw this pattern occurring, no matter where in the world it was happening. So, in this video, I'm going to share with you the exact numbers behind the male biological clock and how that impacts you as you're looking for the right guy for marriage and family. My name is Malaika Neri. I've been helping smart women around the world for the past 7 years find the right guy to fall in love and settle down and one day start a family. My students are high achieving, ambitious women who want to meet a man who makes them feel cherished, loved, and adored. And I'm going to help you get there, one date at a time. So let's dive into talking about the male biological clock. Does it exist? Is it real? And what are you even talking about, Malaika? I'm going to break it down for you. Point number one, the male biological clock isn't biological, but it is still a clock. We women are born with all the eggs we'll ever have. So I'm guessing that you know, if you're watching this video, that to make a baby, you always need an egg found in a woman's body. No gender discussion here. And a spermatozoid, found in a man's body. So even a gay man would have sperm, and even a lesbian woman would have eggs. We women are born with all the eggs we're ever going to have at birth. It's insane to imagine, but like eggs are like minuscule. You can't even see them. And men are constantly generating a new supply of sperm. From what I understand, and it's not a scientific definition, but from what I understand, a man can give birth as soon as he's able to ejaculate, and a woman can only have a baby. A man can like have a baby as soon as he's able to make sperm come out of his body, and a woman can have a baby only during a period of 30 years. So we women have a pretty limited fertility cycle. Of course, thanks to modern technology, you can freeze your eggs, you can freeze embryos, you can do surrogacy. Once you have frozen your eggs, another woman can carry your own biological child. So today there are many options if you want to have a baby outside of this 30-year period, more or less from ages 10 to 15 as a woman when we start menstruating, to ages 45 to 50 when we stop menstruating. Now, do women give birth at age 50? Yes, there are a small number who do, but it is uncommon and not recommended by doctors. Do women give birth at age 9? Yes, I have met them myself in the mountains of Peru, but is again not recommended by doctors, and many women's bodies are not finished growing at that point, so it like puts unnecessary stress on basically a child's body. So coming back to the male biological clock, how does all of this relate? I'm trained as an economist, so my first instinct is always to look at data. What does the data say? And although Hollywood and Bollywood teach us that you just need to find the right person, everything will go according to plan, my training as an economist and the past 7 years helping high achieving men and women find the right person have taught me that dating is a numbers game. Now more than ever, the more that women work, the more that women are financially independent, the more that it becomes purely a numbers game. And even back in my grandmother's time, you really had to just meet a bunch of people until you found the right person who matched all of your criteria. So coming back to the male biological clock, one, you need to find a partner who actually wants to have kids on the same timeline that you do. Now, excuse me for being vulgar, but I don't know a better way to say this. A man can force a woman to get pregnant, But a woman cannot force a man to make her pregnant. So we women always carry the kid, right? Even in the modern day, a man cannot carry a child. It's medically impossible, even with a sex change operation. And so we women will always carry the child. And very unfortunately, a man can make a woman pregnant even if she doesn't want to be pregnant. This is illegal, it is a crime, but it is physically and biologically possible. And it does happen. A woman, however, cannot force a man to get an erection and then impregnate her. Like it's as far as I know, impossible. And so you need a partner who is willing to make you pregnant. Some of my friends, they would trick their partners. They would say, "Oh, I'm not ovulating," or "I'm not on birth. I am on birth control right now," and they would do it with their partners, and then they would get pregnant, and their partners would be like, "Ha! I thought you couldn't." And she said, "Surprise!" And then they had a kid. So women know this. A lot of women know this. It's not a secret. However, you cannot force a man to do it with you. You cannot force a man to freeze his sperm and then fertilize your egg in a clinic. It requires male consent. So it's funny, there's this big conversation about female consent, but you also need male consent. So point number one, a man needs to want to have a kid in order for you to have his baby. You cannot make him ejaculate. You cannot get his sperm any other way. It's not going to suddenly come out of his mouth. Like, you need his consent to get his sperm. And a sperm is a requirement for making a baby. The point that we won't get into right now is that you might need multiple attempts of fusing sperm and egg to get pregnant. So it's not like one and done. It's multiple attempts for that one lucky sperm to eventually turn into your child that you will carry to term. So you need a man's consent. So how do you go about getting a man's consent? On time. And this is the crux of today's video. I once came upon this study, and it's just such a pity that it's not more studied, that gave the statistics of when a man was likely to have a child for the first time. And I don't say a man can give birth. I mean a man becoming a father by getting a woman pregnant. What age is the man? This is a topic we never discuss in our society. We make it all about the woman. But the same criteria actually apply to men, especially because men work, men still go out to sea, men still join the army. If there's a draft, it is a draft for men. There's no draft for women. And men still don't give birth, like ever. So a man can get a woman pregnant, disappear for the rest of her life, and she will still have that child, and that child can still be born. So a man's role in the process is literally only a few seconds long. But you still need his consent. So the study was about what age is the man when he becomes a father for the first time, when he impregnates the woman, but also when that child is born. Like, what age is the dude? And it was so interesting. I'm going to give you the exact numbers I read in the study, and I memorized them so I would remember them forever. If a man's first child is born, if a man is 41 years old, 41, not 40, not 42, 41 years old, the chances of him having a child, no, the chances of him getting married are 5% or less. So assuming you marry him and then that night you start getting it on to make a baby, the chances are 5% or less. And this is assuming you are ovulating on your wedding night. 5% or less, aka almost nothing. So it's 95% chance if he's older than 41 and never been married before, never had a child before, never been in a serious relationship before, if he's having his first marriage at age 41, there's a less than 5% chance that he'll actually get married, that he'll do the things to get married. And when I was younger, I remember my mom used to tell me all the time, she was like, Malaika, men get more fixed in their ways as they get older. And my mom always worked in HR, so she had access to a huge variety of people all over the world. Like, she wasn't, making this up. She literally went to work every single day with smart men and women from all around the world. And she saw the reality that, like, as people got older, they got more set in their ways. So this statistic about marriage is true in every aspect of life. People are less likely to take risks. They're less likely to start a business. They're less likely to move to a new country. They're less likely to fall in love, not because they cannot. Again, you can fall in love, you can have a baby if you're a dude at any age, 9 years old or 95 years old. But the likelihood after age 41 for a man of getting married for the first time ever, if he's never been in a relationship before, never been married before, never lived with a woman who's not his mom or sister before, is less than 5%. So you can safely assume if you're meeting a man, 41 years old, never been married before, never lived with a woman, never had a serious girlfriend, never tried to get married, never had a live-in relationship, probably not going to happen. And I've seen this myself when I've done matchmaking. The guy will find some crackpot reason that there's a problem with the woman. And I'm just like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah, wasn't that into her? And I'm like, oh, he's a never man. Okay, moving right along. Now, second statistic, and this is the second number you should remember. If a man is above 43 years of age and he's never been married before, it's like only 2 years older, right? 41, 42, 43. 43 years old, never been married before, never lived with a woman before, never had a child before, never tried to start a serious relationship before, never lived with a woman, the chances of him getting married and settling down, assuming you start getting it on from your wedding night, is less than 3%. 3%. So it's like, you know how they say with condoms, the chances of a condom breaking are, the chances a condom would work is like 99.9%. Is it condoms or birth control? Anyway, chances are like very low, but it does happen. It's like that. Can you marry a man who's 43 years old and never been married before and like turn him into your husband? Of course you can. Of course. There are 8 billion people on the planet. 8 billion people. Let's say 4 billion are men. Like 3% of 4 billion is still a massive number. Massive. That's still millions and millions of men. Single men who are available to marry you and want to marry you and would happily commit and start a family with you. I'm not saying impossible. I'm saying dating is a numbers game. And just like when you're having a child, can you have a child at age 42? Absolutely. Women do it every single day of the week. I know I could go to the hospital down the street right now and I'd find a 42-year-old woman about to give birth. But is that statistically advised? Is it common? Is it no big deal? No, it is called a geriatric pregnancy. It requires extra attention. Sometimes it requires a cesarean just because the doctors get all in a panic. And it's the same with marrying a man at age 41 or 43 and he's never been married before. He's never lived with a woman. He's never been in a serious relationship. He's never had a child before. He has never started a family. It's not impossible, but it is extremely unlikely. And here is why. The process of living with a partner, and I've lived with several men, roommates, partners, boyfriends. I've lived with my father. I've lived with cousins, and I've also hosted, because I used to do a lot of couch surfing back in the day, I've also hosted a lot of men at my home who were like travelers, and we had a wonderful time. We would cook meals together, so they would like stay at my home for a couple of days. Or I was a couch surfer. I also did like the cyclist version of couch surfing, which is called warm showers, where I would be hosted by many different men from around the world. Always a wonderful experience, like always positive. The worst thing that could happen was that like the guy's house was dirty, but they were always so loving, so gentle, so like hospitable. But they were not ready for marriage. So just because a man like hosted me for a few nights, or just because he was a guest in my house for a few nights, that doesn't mean he's ready for marriage. For a man to live every single day of the week with a woman, men who have been successfully married for a long time will all say one thing. All of them. All of them. If they don't want to get divorced and if they're not at a risk of their wife leaving them, they will all say, You know what? My wife is always right. And you can see this on YouTube. You just type in the name of any celebrity or any famous politician like Barack Obama. They will all say the same thing. And I've recently watched a clip by Barack Obama where he said, you know, it took me 15 years to realize that Michelle is always right. This man was responsible for running the world's #1 economy. I don't think he realizes. He's responsible for running the world's #1 economy. He's going on the internet and telling the entire world. I think it was like the Late Show with David Letterman or whatever, where he was saying, my wife is always right. Harvard educated law school graduate, if you're chosen, elected to run the world's #1 economy, 500 million people, leader of the free world, saying his wife is always right. This is what all smart men do. They listen to their wives. So for a man at age 43, he has spent 4 decades not listening to anyone besides his mom, in a best case scenario, his sister. And let's assume between the ages of 20 and 43, he's not lived with a woman. He's not had anyone tell him what to do. In his mind, he spent 2 decades or longer believing that his way is the only way because he's been responsible for his own life, right? So for him to overnight make that mental switch that my wife is always right, it is extremely difficult for any person, let alone a man. And I wish men were different. Like, I wish men were more adaptable, but I found the same to be true for women as well. Maybe to a slightly less degree. It's just very difficult to measure, like, your adjustability rate, right? There's no metric for that. But I found with my students who are in their 40s and they've never been married before, never lived with a man, never had a serious relationship, never dated, never tried to have a child, like, it's not that they cannot adapt, it's just that they don't have that muscle. So if someone has been handicapped their whole life and never used the muscles in their legs and they cannot walk and they've never used those muscles are like atrophied, right? It's the same with a man who has never lived with a woman at age 43. If he's been independent since he was 18, since he went to college, it's going to be extremely difficult to adjust. And women, my friends and relatives who've married older men, they complain about how difficult the first 2 years were because that man just had no experience listening to a woman. And it took him a long time, usually several years, to even learn how to listen to a woman. So this is what I mean by the male biological clock. If a man has not had a kid and not had a serious relationship before age 41, and he's never been married and he's never lived with a woman, the chances that he actually will and become the father of your child are less than 5%, aka not worth your time. So if you're 41 or you're 45 and you want a man in his early 40s, look for a guy who's already been married, best case scenario, already had a child, best case scenario, already been in a stable relationship and lived with women, not just dated, not just I'll pick you up at 7 and I'll take you to dinner and then drop you back at your house and go back to my house where I live exactly as I want, but lived with a woman and understands this idea of we build a household together. So one of the guys I lived with, he would always empty the dishwasher. And like, I loved using the dishwasher. I just never emptied it because by the time I woke up, he had already emptied the dishwasher. No matter what time I woke up. And he like never complained, you don't empty the dishwasher. He just did it. And that is a normal part of life in a couple. You can't keep score. But a man who has never lived with a woman, like he wouldn't get this intuitively, right? He's like never lived it. That is a teeny tiny example of the millions of things you have to get used to when you start living with another human who was raised in a different family, maybe raised in a different culture, raised in a different environment, different city, different background, different lifestyle. And you suddenly start living together, even if you're married, even if your families approve, even if you speak the same language or come from the same community, blah, 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 it doesn't make it any less hard. So the male biological clock is based on the idea that dating is a numbers game. Everything is about probability and numbers. And if you want the highest probability of converting a random dude who said he's heterosexual and says he wants to find a wife into your husband who's put a ring on your finger and signed a marriage certificate with you, then look for a guy who's been married before or been in a live-in relationship before, emphasis on live-in, had a serious girlfriend before, maybe even had a child or family before, to to increase your chances. And this is how you actually start a family with a man who's older than 41 years of age.